kids, look what the cat has dragged in. We put out an APB. We put his picture on milk cartons. We found him. Our old buddy Bruce Dowbiggen in studio, in the Oodle Noodle studio with us. You exist. You're still here. Where have you been?
I've been where I've always been.
Where's that?
Hanging around.
Oh, hanging around.
Well, I haven't had a regular job that I went to for so long. In fact, maybe the last steady job I was at was when you and I were doing radio together.
Really?
I worked newspapers and
sure.
stuff, but
yeah.
It's not a steady job. You go to do a thing here and a thing there. So anyway, I've been here living down in the south part of town, just across from Spruce Meadows. And with my wife, we've got 4 grandchildren now.
Amazing.
My 3
Not
kids.
bad for a 29-year-old guy, right?
It's a little gray on the side.
Yeah.
It's a little gray on the side.
Yeah.
So
don't call grandpa when he's teeing off, right? Or those are the rules?
Tee off on you.
Yeah.
So we're down there. I'm a member at Sirocco.
Okay.
And so it's right near there. So I just stumble out the door and go play some golf.
Okay.
And traveling around a little bit. We were away for a little while this winter down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And working on a new book. We'll talk the book thing.
Oh yeah, we will. Yes, we will.
And but I was interested yesterday to see the news about the arena.
Okay, I have an opinion, but I want you go ahead. You have the floor.
Well, no, I was kind of interested in because you.
Well, here's what I think. I not a favorite of mine at all, and I don't want to get into the politics thing because it's a very divisive thing. I get that, but when somebody stands up and says, "Here's our commitment," of course, there's a bit of a barrier, the May 29th election. But if Calgary supports the UCP, we'll get behind it. I just wonder if the city and the Flames weren't so desperate to get a deal done that this was just too good to, pass up. But it seemed like, Bruce, from my standpoint, a lot of pomp and circumstance for something in principle. Yeah. That should have been. The pomp and circumstance should be saved for, here's the ceremonial shovel in the ground. The tractors are behind us. Can't wait to open the doors in 2 seasons or whatever it is.
Yeah, you and I think alike.
Okay.
But that happened all the time in the past.
Oh, no, it's not new.
No, we didn't think alike. Anyhow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
How about this?
Yes.
As soon as I saw it, I said, okay, the Conservatives are nervous about Calgary.
Yeah.
In this election. They know that they have to dominate Calgary if they're going to get back in. It said something to me about the Flames organization, that they kind of are hanging out in the breeze, that their fans and the whole culture around them at the end of this year was sour.
Yeah.
It was not good. It's not good. So you had a lot of people, I think, who were motivated. I think that the mayor is motivated. The sense out there in the community is that she's not partial to the sports people, people like us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it gave her a chance to get a little bona fides there. So I think a lot of people needed it to happen now.
Yeah.
And in particular, also with the Oilers doing what they're doing in the playoffs in their newer, I won't call it a new rink, but their newer rink.
Yeah.
It's just not a good look. And, I've written this in a couple of places online and on my website, Not the Public Broadcaster.
Thank you. Sorry, what was that website?
Not the Public Broadcaster.
.com, not .ca, not the public broadcaster.com. That's the website?
That's it.
Okay.
Because the CBC is the public broadcaster.
That's right. And they're .ca.
That's right. And I worked there for 25 years.
So not the publicbroadcaster.com.
So when I went to start my website, one of my good friends, Bernard Graham, who worked at CBC, we were talking about it. He said, well, if there's one thing it will not be the public broadcaster. So not the public.
Well, there's a little bit of British humor in there too, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Anyway, but you still write a Monday column, correct?
I do a Monday and Thursday column on my website and agitate. And I was making a point somewhere there from the website, and I've forgotten what it was particularly, but it's something to do with the arena.
Yeah.
I was going to say what I've said about the Flames. We can jump right into this right now.
Yeah.
What I've said about the Flames is people are going to talk about what they have to do this summer, goalie, defenseman, whatever it is. To me, it's a more existential project that they've got to do.
I agree.
They have got to tell this league and the people who play in the league and the people who make those decisions that this is a place to come and play hockey.
Yes.
There is a sense out there that this place is, as they say with the fish, smelling from the head down, right?
Yep.
And the building is old.
Yep.
The coach is
old,
toxic in many places. Yeah. The owner spends a lot of his time outside of the country. He's a remote owner, et cetera, et cetera. And they have to find a way to put a smiley face on this franchise so that people will want to play here.
I agree.
And the one of the book that we're working on right now,
Yep.
is called Deal With It. And
Yep.
it's I think it's 6 or 7 of the most famous trades in NHL history. And I decided the last one was going to be the Tkachuk trade.
You are putting it in there.
Oh yeah.
You think, and we'll get, this is going to make a lot more sense when the next guest joins us.
Yeah.
But you think it's one of the most important trades or historical trades, or you think it's one of the more interesting stories to tell when it comes to trades?
It's a significant story.
Yes.
And the reason it's significant, Rob, and I put it in there, of course, it's all bundled in with the Goodrow thing.
Yep.
It's bundled in with a couple of other, but by and large, I'm asking the question in that chapter: can Canadian teams, in particular small market Canadian teams, hang on to American hockey players? Can you do that? I'm curious with McDavid, that if somehow this thing goes sideways, does McDavid look at this and say, what am I doing here? Same thing in Toronto with Matthews. Now they have more money, etc.
Sure.
But if you're Matthews and the thing goes sideways, you're an American kid. Hey, the winters are cold here. Let's go somewhere where we can be warm. All that stuff.
In difference to a gentleman who apparently posts on the Instagram page after every show that I spend too much time worrying about where Matthew Tkachuk is gone.
Yeah.
And I don't remember talking about it in the last month. But anyway, for you, I have said all along, and I've said it was building. I said there's something good, bad, or indifferent, something in the water in Canada right now. And it's not even a Calgary thing. I point to Oliver Ekman-Larsson's agent going on radio in Vancouver and talking openly about it. Winnipeg. I think we're back. You and I first met pre-04 lockout with the equalization.
The 62-cent dollar.
And it feels a lot like that in a way, although now the teams can spend the money. It was Johnny Gaudreau left a year and $15 million American on the table to go.
Columbus, to a team that he knew wasn't going to win.
Right.
I mean, this is again, now you're writing the chapter for me.
Sorry. But we'll give you the transfer.
No, transfer. But to a large extent, that's exactly what I was thinking. And we have Matthews this summer, I believe, is coming into his decision year.
I think he's coming into his decision year.
He's going to tell him whether let's negotiate seriously or do I want to get out of here.
So let me ask you this, because I'm going to tie the two together, and it's not going to seem like right off the top. You've been around a long time. Did Mackenzie Weegar's comments about the building at the end of the year not strike you as that's not how they do things in Calgary?
Well, here's what's different between when you and I started. I think you and I started probably working together
03.
And I'd been around for a few years before that at the Fan. But anyhow, around 03. And while a free agency was there, and that was an issue, and the agents were there, it's different today because these guys are saying, my wife doesn't want to be in a cold city. And if you want your wife to spend the winter in Calgary, either she's got to be a person who likes the adventure and all that sort of stuff of cold weather. Now, we're here. We understand it. We like it most of the time. Yeah. But they have to understand that. Then you have to see all of the other things about being in a city like Calgary. The travel. Right. It's not a great travel city for NHL teams.
How would you like to be playing in that Jersey Rangers series? Yeah. How's that travel for you?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no equivalent out here.
Yeah. Or even Washington, Philadelphia. They're all
right. Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of things, decisions that are being made by players about where they want to go. And at the time, I don't recall at the time if there were that many, but we know now that there are, of course, I believe it's 9 or 10 tax-free states in the United States.
Yes.
Now, Washington State, that's Seattle.
Yeah.
So that might be a factor. You've got the 2 teams in Florida.
Yep.
You've got
Texas.
1 team in Texas. You've got Nashville and Tennessee.
Vegas.
Vegas, yeah. Vegas is Nevada is a tax-free state. So all of a sudden you're saying, okay, we can pay you all the money you want here in Calgary to hang on to a star. But you know what? You're going to go in some place where, and secondarily, again, you and I talked about this a lot in the past. You're going to go to a place where you're not going to be bugged on the street every day. You're not the quarterback for the Cowboys. You're not the shooting guard for the Mavericks. Yep. You're a guy who can play, make his money, and then sort of disappear with your family and have a life.
Yep.
So again, all of those things are there. This is a challenge, and I don't hear coming from the Flames. Well, of course, now with Tree sort of put aside, I guess they're going to talk about other things. But I wasn't hearing this before. I'm not hearing anything about all of those things that we're talking about, Rob, about how do we get guys to stay.
I don't.
Without beyond money.
I think there's an acknowledgement of it, but I don't think they were ever going to talk about it publicly.
Yep.
That's a ownership decision. Like, it's this whole thing about, I can't say the rebuild and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's marching orders, right? Like, this is how we're going to
rebuild.
Hmm?
You just said rebuild. You can't say rebuild.
Well, you're not allowed to say it. And that goes back to Jay Feaster. I love that all the kids now think, oh, did you hear what John Bean said? Yeah, come talk to me about Feaster. And that's okay. You spend the money, you own. The thing about Murray, and Murray does not get talked a lot about in this market. Yeah. Never has, still doesn't. He's not that far removed from other guys in the league.
Yeah.
Right? It's, Foley down in Vegas is a handful, right?
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? So there is that. To me, it's the one thing you can control in all of this. You can't control the taxes. You can control the building. You can control the facility. You can make it a place where when the family comes and they visit it, they go, wow, I can see myself here. Look at this dressing room and everything like that. Now you really have to take them out to Banff. Yeah. Like, don't bring them to the rink, take them out to Banff, show them Banff, right? And it's the reality. People don't like to hear it because when we talk like this, they think we were slagging Calgary. No, we're not.
It's the reality.
We're trying to, but we're also looking for ways of equalizing the playing field.
We wanted to stay here.
You want Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk, and this is a silliness thing too, and I'm getting really good at this. Take McDavid out of the equation. Matthew Tkachuk's in the conversation for MVP this year.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. He's a good player. If he stays in Calgary, he could have been one of the all-time greats for the Calgary Flames.
But people here asked, where was that guy in the playoffs last year? But anyhow,
trust me, I'm the same guy that was watching this series going, he's doing this to whom now? Yeah. You mean you couldn't choke out, the goalie for Edmonton last year or something like that? You have to pick on Olmark. There is part of that.
I think he knew. I think he and Johnny knew they were out of there. I saw commitment from Johnny in the playoffs last year that I didn't see from Matthew.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is explained by the fact that and in the comments he made, this is where I wanted to be.
Right.
And blah, blah, blah.
And let's deal with the other 800-pound gorilla in the room. Since you and I started this gig, the player has changed.
Yeah.
You don't go to the player and berate him, bully him, force him to do anything. You go to the player and you negotiate. And I really believe that. Now with the star players, you have to go in there and have a plan and explain to them why this is going to be good for them, and they will execute your plan. And that's not the coach right now.
No, that's old. I remember 3 books ago.
That's your time measurement.
That's how I do things.
Yes.
3 books ago, I believe it was 3, maybe it was 2. Whatever.
Yeah.
I spent 6 years around the Vancouver Canucks.
Yes.
Mike Gillis was the GM. Now you ask me. Ice Storm.
Thank you. Ice Storm. Yeah.
Ice Storm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I write the books. I don't put the titles on.
No, but you got really good access in that book too, didn't you? Yeah.
I'd known Mike Gillis a long time as an agent.
Yeah.
He'd given me access in the past. Gave me access this time. And I remember the moment I knew that he was in trouble was that when they decided to get rid of AV, they had to do something. Mike wanted John Cooper.
Yeah.
The owner wanted Torts. And I saw when he lost out on that battle, I said, this isn't going to end well.
No.
And this gets back to Daryl.
Yep.
They need John Cooper in Calgary today. They need that kind of a coach who can do all the things you talked about, the respect, say something to that guy that he doesn't feel like you're yelling in his face. I see these coaches who yell at people in all sports still. I'm going like, really? Do you think that world is still existing? I don't know.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
My theory, and I've shared it with a few people. I shared it with Eric Gachek. I'll share it with you. As I'm watching this, is the secret, and this is so easy to say because they're great players, but is the secret for John Cooper, who's been in Tampa for 10 years.
Yep.
Just think about how many coaches have been in Alberta in the last 10 years, right? He's been there for 10 years. Is the secret not being able to offload some of the hard assness to the captains and have your players kind of be your enforcers? That's a wrong term, but they're the ones that kind of they play bad guy or bad cop every once in a while, right?
Well, we've only seen one captain in Calgary since 2004, and that was the years when Gio ran the dressing room. And
no, Iggy.
Well, but Iggy was never a force in the dressing room in the
okay. I see.
He was a captain.
Yeah.
The public thought he was.
Well, it was a follow me captain.
He was.
Yeah.
But Gio was the kind of guy, look at you after you didn't play well and try to hold you accountable. Yeah. And as we know, the current coach and the previous coach, he's the captain of the team.
Mhm.
It's his
Mhm.
steely looks that everybody
Mhm.
it has to go by. So that's what kind of concerns me about it, is that I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe you have some insights into it. I know
think
he's got more money coming to him, and I know that Murray hates to pay money he doesn't have to
agree.
pay.
I think you and I are going to revisit this in a little while because I do want to dig a little deeper on it. Let's stay on the building side just for a second here. Again, it's the one thing you can control in this conversation. You get a building, you get a facility, you start to become a destination. I just want to go back. We should have done a pre-show. And then we would have been
leave it in the green room.
Yeah, no, we're doing it all out here. I just want to go back to the idea that what this is. This is political opportunism, buying votes.
It's everything.
Is it ugly like that? Can we use those terms, or
These
is it?
things have always been.
But it's
stadiums and arenas have always been political creatures.
It's not invented. You're right.
No, but and no one has been more critical of the arena deals that have been done in the past than I have.
Yep. For sure.
Andrew Zimbalist and people, their books, I read
absolutely
cover, etc.
Absolutely.
It has changed. When I go to Toronto and I see I guess it's the Scotiabank Center now, or you go to the Rogers Center, there, the baseball park. It has changed in that you develop that area. It's not just the stadium.
It's not just a one building thing.
And people in Calgary know that the area around the Dome has been a disaster, really, financially. And they've wanted the East Village to thrive. And we know that people don't want to live in the East Village the way it's constituted now.
Correct.
It's dark and it's kind of a little bit forbidding. So this gives you a chance to reinvent that whole part of the city.
I agree.
So that you've got the restaurants and you've got a comfort zone. So in particular, women feel like, okay, I can walk around that part of town. I don't think they necessarily feel as comfortable as they should right now in the area. I hope I'm not offending people or
no. I think if you go to where the library is, I think where Platform is, even where the King Eddie is, the music, the Bell Center, these are nice pieces. But by building it up, is this not another form of gentrification? Gentrification?
Well, the kind of thing they're talking about isn't gentrification. It's like building a cosmopolitan kind of place.
Okay.
And it's restaurants, and it's going to be
entertainment hub.
It's going to be sort of technology companies coming in there, etc. It's going to be the whole thing to try to put a new face on it. The previous mayor, that was his baby. That was what he was trying to envision. Time ran out before he got all that stuff done. There really was no excuse for the arena deal falling apart the way it did too. I was just so discouraged in all the parties that it fell apart the way it did. The re-ask on some conditions about the Dome, the intransigence on the part of the Flames from doing it, etc. It's just been a huge disaster for the city, not just as a hockey rink, but all sorts of stuff. It stalled us out.
I agree. And Bruce, that's why when I started this podcast a couple of months ago, I just recently been at the 35th anniversary of the Olympics, and I saw a bunch of the people that put it on, and they were talking about it. And it's so easy to get nostalgic about the past. I grant you that. But what it did is it really made me think about, we used to have a society in which a hero could emerge, a Frank King could emerge, be a visionary. Look, you don't want to see the sausage get made.
No.
But it got made. And it was good sausage. Oh my God, it was good sausage. And we were the best sausage in the world for a long time, right? And then
it's getting a little weird.
And then it got but it got bad, But to me, the whole plebiscite about an Olympics, and that's a whole other conversation. But there was nobody standing up, and everybody was saying, "What's in it for me?" Not as opposed to what's in it for us. And we need a little dreaming. Well, I don't know if this is it, but it's better.
The city, all the Canadian cities have changed in that respect. So I don't want to point to Calgary as being different. I've lived in Montreal.
Okay.
I've lived in Ottawa. I've lived in Toronto. I've lived in Edmonton. Lived in Calgary. Spent a lot of time in Vancouver. And some smaller cities. And you talked about gentrification. It has produced a different kind of consciousness about the city and what it should be doing and what it should be delivering.
Right.
And it's again, I want to choose the right word, but it's a more feminine version of what they think a city should be. It's not what the Flames and Calgary was, this, brawling kind of cowboys and oil men and all that sort of stuff.
Right. It's got a modern motif to it, more of a
We want that sort of thing. And that's where Calgary is at right now. And it's one of the things that they have to try and find a way to make the downtown reflect that. So suburban families will come into town, not just on hockey night, but other nights to do this stuff.
Yep.
So people will come and visit us and say, hey, we weren't sure where to go, but on a holiday, but we heard that the area around the arena is cool, and we'll come for Stampede and see it. All of those things.
You have always been a good arbitrator of whether or not I'm close to being onto something or if I'm Looney Tunes and out to lunch. Two things that it took away from yesterday that don't sit right with me. I want to see something. Show me a plan. Show me a picture. Show me something. Give me a sense. And I know they don't have it. But it just
I didn't read all of the stuff. So we're reinventing the plan for the building itself.
Yes.
So all the other stuff has gone out the window.
Yes.
Okay. So
we're back to square one. We don't have plans to show you. Yeah. And this is my same criticism when Ken brought out Calgary Next.
Ken King.
Yeah. They had some pictures, and we talked to Ken on the radio, and we started talking about, no. Those are just, don't look at those. That's not it. It's just, could be, but it's, all through this whole process, I'm a visual person. Give me something, right? Show me. Yeah. Thank you. Gavin, there's a map. We have a map. We know where it's going. I like the location, sure, but we don't know what it's looking like. And the other part of that subsection, because I said two, so I have to subsection this one is, to me, tell me what's going to make it cutting edge, right? Because I know they love the Detroit's Little Caesars Arena. Yeah. I know, even to this day, Excel in St. Paul still has a lot of positive qualities. Yeah. Well, are we just going to build a building to have a new building? Or are we going to build the next? There's nothing wrong with Edmonton, but I don't think that new building is, the next generation of arenas. Do you?
I would say it's part of the current style of how to build
style. Yes. But I don't think it was cutting edge in many ways. It's got all the cutting edge technology, not saying that, but, and part of it was that they did the loges and they really worked the suites and stuff like that. But again, I think that was a trend in building. Yeah. But I'd like this building. I don't know what it is, Bruce, but tell me it's going to be the most technologically advanced. It's going to have an LED screen on the roof, so when you're landing in YYC, you're going to be able to watch commercials in HD as you fly over.
Well, the Alberta government may have something to say about this, but one of the things that I would say is that it would be a betting open zone, a zone where you can go and make wagers.
Geo-fenced, and you can go in and it would have a sports book right in it.
Yes.
As part of even the seating. Yeah. Give me something like that.
And to your point, it would be something along the lines of what they've done to the Rogers Centre in Toronto for the Blue Jays games this year. They understood that the place was stale, concrete. The fences were forbidden.
Yeah.
They've done a whole lot of stuff integrating restaurant and the
and kind of social time too, right? The way that people, I'm not sure we all want to
allowing places for people to move. Yes. Like there should be a place where people can stand and have drinks and watch
the game.
Your seat is there, but you mosey on up here because as we all know in all the stadiums, what's the problem? Everybody goes for a drink between periods. They disappear.
Egress, ingress.
And then the thing starts again and there's nobody in the seats.
Okay, number 2.
Yes, sir.
You won't care about number 2 as much as I care about number 2. Community rink. Yes, more ice. 1,000 seats. Sucks ass.
Yeah.
This city needs, when it lost the corral, it lost that 5,000 to 6,000 seat. Ask the people up in Edmonton about the practice facility. That's what they're saying now. Yeah. It should have been bigger. It should have been bigger. The Hitman play out at 7 Chiefs, it needs to be bigger, right? If you built a 4,000 to 5,000 seat arena, punt the Hitman out there. They can now sell in ice logos and stuff like that. It just this is one of the things I said for a long time about the big arena, the main arena. Yeah,
was when they were having all the trouble with the city. I said, if I'm the owners, I'm going to go see the Tsutsina. I'm going to go say, I'm not going to have any of the political problems I would have with that. Let's go and build exactly what we want and do a partnership with the Tsutsina. I live over on that side of town now with the Costco and I can see the development, et cetera.
Yep.
The Tsutsina people want to be progressive.
Gab, can you put that map up again for me? I think, okay. No, there's another. No, the reason I'm saying that map. So there's the C train right now, and there's a Green Line station there.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because there's no C train out there. I bet you any money.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Rob, you could have one coming out there. You've got all of the ring road now and all the confluence of everything there.
Dude, I'm a big fan of Cetina. I love Cetina.
Yeah. I guess to the point I'm making is that this that maybe this secondary rink, that be the project that you do with the Cetina as a project together.
I guess
secondary rink.
I mean, again, I'm blessed.
That's the politics today is appearing to be inclusive. Well, you mentioned Treaty 17 and all off the top.
Treaty 7.
If you're going to be, that's how you act it. And I think they might. I haven't talked to the people.
They don't talk to you.
Personally.
John doesn't call you on Mondays and go, "Hey, here's what we're doing this week. What do you think?"
I see him at the Costco.
You do, yeah.
We fight over the last muffin. The muffins are a good deal. Anyhow, but that would be my idea as well.
Yeah.
But rethinking the building, rethinking what it is we're saying to people, why they should go, that they feel safe around the building.
Yep.
I have no idea about parking.
There's a parking structure coming with this as well.
Okay, because this is a city that drives.
You've noticed that too, eh?
Yeah, C-Train. Listen, my could-be son-in-law is a transit guy, and he's worked for the city. He now lives in Toronto and does that sort of stuff. But we talk all the time about transit, and transit everywhere is having problems right now.
Is it ever?
With security, etc.
Is it ever?
So what we have to do is we have to find a way to make people happy that they can get on at Bridlewood, where you and I live, and haul on up there and get off at Stampede and feel that we're
comfortable.
Good.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because the last part of the show today, I'm going to be talking about fan behavior, but it's people behavior. And it's funny when we were talking about Calgary Next, we never talked about that. When we talked about the last deal, we never talked about that. But what you raised, Bruce, is so important right now. It is so important.
Because here's the thing, Rob, is that when you price your tickets, well, they have to be priced.
Yep.
I'm not critiquing the team here, but when you price your tickets to maybe $300, those are people who don't care to spend another $25 on parking. They're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to get on public transit. So for all the talk about public transit, the higher the ticket prices go, the fewer of those people who are economizing. You're going to get. You're going to get people who are going to drive there, etc.
Yeah, but again, to your point, this is supposed.
Are we invoicing them for this free advice? By the way, we should.
Oh, I just assume this is a TED Talk. That this will be shown at the next CSEC management meeting.
Yeah,
guys, if you don't mind, pay attention to this screen here. These two guys have got it. Why aren't they here? Hey, I didn't get a harump from that guy. You remember that?
Yeah.
All right. We are live in the Oodle. This is so much fun. We are live in the Oodle Noodle studio. Local, love, delicious. Since opening their first store back in 2005, Oodle Noodle has been all flavor and just the right amount of weird. 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, in Airdrie, 105 Main Street North. Pick up and delivery. Are you pro noodle? Do you like noodles?
Ramen noodles? Yeah.
Ramen?
Ramen noodles?
Raymond? What?
Raymond, Alberta. Yeah. They're from Alberta.
Oh, from Raymond, Alberta. Okay. Everybody loves Raymond.
Ramen. Potato. Come on.
All right.
Can I ask a favor?
Yes.
Can you get your crack staff just a glass of water?
I'll see what I can do.
Please.
I'll see what we can do. That's a first.
This is live.
Nope. I know this is very live.
I meant
when the podcast comes out at 3:00, it won't be as live, but here we are. All right. One of the reasons that our friend Bruce is on today is we're going to talk about this book. And this book is called Inexact Science, the 6 most compelling draft years in NHL history. But the author line is what intrigues me the most. Bruce, I get. But this young man who I remember hanging around at the studio, who I remember you using as an editor on previous projects, who I remember had, like, it was frightening.
He worked at the Dome.
I know, but it was frightening because he'd come in and you try to fool him or you try it, and he had he still does. It's not like it went away, but he has a mind like a steel trap. Very pleased to have join us, courtesy of our good friends at Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com, 76 years in Calgary. And just right now, you can pick up great deals on snowboards, skis, things to keep you warm because it's still a little bit snowy in the mountain. Very excited to have your son.
My eldest son.
Is it number one son?
Number one son.
Evan Dowbiggen joins us all the way from Toronto. Evan, it's been a long time. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine, Rob. Thanks for having me on. Nice to see you again, and nice to chat about the book and everything. like we're going to do. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Evan lives in Brendan Shanahan's neighborhood.
Oh,
Brendan
he
Shanahan,
does. They're neighbors.
That's where Shanny and his crew came from.
Well,
That's
he's in Mimico.
right down by the lakeshore.
I'm in Long Branch. It's kind of like the next segment over. Actually, there's New Toronto, then there's Long Branch, but it's close. Like I go really close to the old the Mimico Arena that Brendan Shanahan probably played all his lacrosse
The Leafs
and
training
hockey.
place is near you too, isn't it?
Sorry?
The Leafs training facility.
Oh yeah, the Ford Performance Center. I could walk to that in about 15 minutes.
So now we know where you are. So if we're looking for a guest or a place to stay in Toronto, we'll come find it.
Exactly.
Now
You can sleep with the dog.
Let's talk about this first. You, Evan, tell me about this book. Where did the germination? Where did the idea come from? How did you guys start down this path?
Well, I think I had, thrown around some ideas about a book that I want to do someday, and kind of like, drafts or rough versions, like just write out a bunch of chapters and try to, or, something like I could formulate into a proposal. And at first I was writing about, I thought I'd seen a book about the Red Wings Russian Five. And at the same time, I had been looking into doing one about just their 1989 draft, which sort of ties into that whole Russian Five story. That's where it's sort of like the springboard comes from for the Red Wings. And then I thought, that's a really cool subject to try to do a book about, even though it is close to like the one I described. But then, through discussions with my dad and, mostly with that, but it was decided that maybe you could do one about like more years than just 1989. How about other years that stand out, that have all these great stories and historical relevance to them, rather than just focus on the one thing, maybe we could deep dive and bite into some other years, because it's not just, 89 is very interesting, but there are a lot of other years, obviously, that stand out.
Right.
So that's where it really came from, is we're just trying to see, take a year and look at it and extrapolate on it, and then find some other ones and put it all into one book. But of course, then you have to synthesize it down to something a little more narrow than just pick like, hey, 10, 12, 14, 15. Then you have little blurbs on each one. And people who know me know it'd probably be hard for me to do little blurbs on each subject. So that's why we got it to 6, I guess.
So how did you end up with 6? Was that the editor? Was that just a decision you made? How did you end up just refining it down to 6?
I think it started with a more round number. I think it was closer, to 10. It was like at that. And then, like I said, realizing that each one would have to be a little more brief to make the book something a little smaller than like a, Tolkien novel or something.
Sure.
It would have to be, a little more concise. And so it could have, people say, well, why did you just get it down to 9 or 8 or something like that? But I just, based on what was written, like each chapter initially was just a small proposal or a small sort of write-up, and then you go from there. And it's just, became obvious that doing something a little smaller than 10 would be prudent. And then it just came down to 6, because we realized, a 7th one, nothing really fits. It would be too much to cram it in. They're maybe too similar, and you start cross-referencing, sort of like the drafts become similar stories. There is some of that with 84 and discussing 89 because of the effect, the Iron Curtain.
We should tell you which ones we decided on doing too.
Well, we're gonna get to that in a second.
And the 6, of course, as my dad has said, is original 6. It's just a nice number in hockey.
You know what? Okay. So the title says compelling. So for you, Evan, is compelling the best, or is it the more interesting stories when you defined it?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, that more interesting stories. I think it's the latter, because because some people miss that point. I think that's why we try to use a word as that draws you in, like compelling, rather than saying the best or the most stacked or the greatest, most successful would have been a term that would have not really applied to what we discuss necessarily. So because a lot of people are saying, well, this is missing 2003. You don't have, how could you not have that draft in there? And I thought,
how did you know I was going to ask that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, because there's so many people from that draft, so many players from that draft turned to be all-stars and potential Hall of Famers, obviously. That's just across the board, not just the first round, but obviously you go beyond that. And that would have been, for a real hockey nerds, that's a compelling draft, because, of course, it's one of the deepest, most rich drafts ever done.
Right.
But in and around that period, there's the next years too. Of course, there's the whole story of like who's the next one, and the 1-2 effect, like the great drafts where you have a number 1 and a number 2 is kind of also really intriguing. And that was very next year with Ovechkin and Malkin. But then there's 2005 with Crosby. So there were some interesting stories out of the Crosby in that draft. It was just that it came down to that one. I thought from that period, I didn't want to pick too many years that were so close to each other as well, and just focus on we have too many from the 80s or too many from the 90s. I want to spread it out over the history of the universal draft anyway, which since 1969. And so it ended up being that from the most recent one we could pick from, because like I said, you could pick a more recent draft and it wouldn't be a complete story yet, because it takes
absolutely
10 to 15 years to tell the entire story properly of a draft. So 2005 is the most recent one, even though that goes back, 18 years now we're talking. So the Sidney Crosby draft, because, he's, there's a lot of guys who come around as the next generational player. But in his draft, it was strange because it had to be done with a whole lottery because there was no season to base it off of.
Right.
There was no arena set up, so they did it in a hotel like the old days. The whole thing was bizarre. There was 2 separate viewing events: watching the lottery, then watching the actual draft itself weeks later. So that's why 05 is talked about, even though I don't, most people would agree it's not as good a draft as 03.
Sure.
So that was the idea.
But the point of each of the ones that we did choose was we wanted each of them to be a significant year, a year that changed the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one we do, of course, is the Lafleur and Dion draft.
Yep.
And that was the one that taught us the value of a first-round draft pick. If we didn't know before, Sammy Pollock taught us that. So we chose that. 79, of course, and it's a great, if you're sitting in a bar sometime and you want to win a bet, you just ask the question, who's the greatest player never to be drafted into the modern NHL? And of course, it was Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
So we chose 79 because that's different in another way. Mario in 84.
Yep.
He's the first guy that kind of spreads his muscles a little bit and says, wait a minute, I know what a first-round pick is like. And so that was significant. 89, as Evan has already referenced, the Russians, then the Red Wings, why that, the international thing. And so we, again, in each of the trades, we did Lindros for obvious reasons. And for each of them, it was something that changed the hockey business.
So, Evan, you said when I picked, Bruce, you said when we picked. I'm confused. Who made the ultimate determination, Evan? How did you, did you guys have to come up with a system to, I want 88. No, I want 89. Was there? Yeah.
I think it was most of the years. I just, selected a bunch of them and then threw them out there and said, here's what I think. And then, of course, there was a process of talking about whittling it down to the 6 we ultimately went with. And I don't really think there was like a real butting of heads on that idea, particularly because I think my dad sort of deferred to me on that a little bit. He was just saying, yeah, okay, I see your reasoning. We'll ask this one.
You chose the years in which you could write the most stuff you could possibly write about the Habs in each year. Somehow, by some miracle, each of the years, as a digress, there's a Patrick Roy.
Nothing wrong with that, Evan.
There's of course Guy Lafleur. There's all sorts, and you did besides you did Carey Price. All sorts of.
All right.
There's a coincidence in a way, but in 91, there's really nothing but the Habs in 91. I know that. And 79, they're barely talking about those. So I've got proof.
Let's go back to 71, because if I remember correctly, that's Oakland, right? Or California was involved with that.
Right.
For you, did it matter, Evan, that's before your time? Was it difficult to get information? Was it difficult to kind of, come up with the stories and the angles?
It makes it a little tougher because you have to go back, for every year you have books and newspaper articles that you can, find. But you can base your research, and you can come up with things for some of the more recent chapters just by going on and finding YouTube videos or something, or interviews that are online that'll help illuminate what you're trying to, the stories you're trying to tell. But for 71, it's a little different because there's not a lot of footage. There's not a lot of insight that you can find other than sort of like people recalling it from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So like the video at the time is sparse compared to say 2005 or even 1991. And you have to really go back far to find the newspaper articles. You got to go through like archive searches, and then piecing it together through a lot of books too. And it also, you have to get to the bottom of, what's truth and what's fiction, what's hearsay, because when things are that old and over time, when the information wasn't as easy to discover, then like sometimes myths get out, sometimes stories are twisted and inaccurate, and eventually you have to find the accountings that sort of seem to have the more consensus aspects of it. So that was the more difficult part for everyone. But I didn't find it. I find it more like fun to do because I knew I had a sort of a basic understanding of it, and I just wanted to make it more accurate and beef that up. So it was kind of, I didn't mind that it was, wait 14 years before I was ever around. I had a lot of fun doing those ones, even compared to, the stuff that I was alive for, really.
Brucey, is it lost on you, or did you, and maybe it's covered in the book, but it's funny to me, the first draft and the last draft that you picked, because what happens if Guy Lafleur is drafted by California? Right? Because that franchise is gone, in 3 or 4 years. When Sydney's drafted by the Penguins.
Could have been Anaheim.
No, but that's also, remember, that was Balsillie and the Penguins, it's not 100% locked in. Historically, the Penguins could have moved, right? He got them the arena. The rest, as they say, is history. Nobody ever thinks about the Penguins not being in Pittsburgh. But I'm just wondering, I mean, how significant is 71? Yeah. Right? I mean, if Guy Lafleur goes to,
well, we as we talk about in the book, or I should say, Evan talks about in the book. I'm not sure how I have to say this now, but as we say in the book, the story that we discovered was that, in fact, obviously the Lafleur trade has been written about. You can find whatever you want. And Sammy took Frank Selke Jr. to the Cleaners.
Absolutely.
A guy who had been working with him at the Canadiens. He took him to the Cleaners on the trade. In any event, the thing we found out was that the night before the draft, that Sam Pollock went to his staff and said, I have a chance to get Detroit's pick too. We could trade them a bag of pucks, Terry Harper, a calendar from the last year's Canadiens winning the Stanley Cup or whatever, and do this deal. And the Canadiens could have had both guys, Dion and Lafleur. And the staff, in fact, they didn't go 100% for it. And so he said, okay, we won't do it. But can you imagine what would have happened there? And it sort of, it changed everything. And what's interesting too about that, and most of these guys, unfortunately, of course, Guy has died since we started the book, but most of these guys have written books. There's a lot of books and stuff. So we had access to material, et cetera. So we were able to find things out and see other perspectives on stuff. And the thing that struck us about it was just at the time how nobody knew. There'd been the previous year when Gilbert Perreault was the guy, but nobody knew what this was going to mean. And of course, they also drafted Larry Robinson, 19th overall.
Yep.
In those days, that was the second round.
Yeah, well, exactly. Ev, what was it like working with your dad?
It was okay. It wasn't a difficult thing where I had to basically talk him out of all kinds of stuff. I think it was fun because it was sort of like he knew that this was a subject I was really, capable of diving into, and that I would have fun doing it, and that I was, he was there to be a sounding board to help me clean up some things and try to facilitate a lot of stuff that I wasn't used to from never having really put together a book like that officially. I had never, I didn't know exactly how to present it the same way that he has experience of doing. So that's why it was really good to work with him, because I, learned some things along the way I didn't think I'd learn necessarily. And it was probably a better book for it. Obviously, it was a little more easy to follow along with than maybe it would have been had I just done the whole thing. And I know there's editors and stuff. I know that a lot of people working to clean it up other than him. But that whole process came about and probably would have the book wasn't maybe it's hard. I don't know. I can't speak to how the experience that the editor had to go through, but it probably made it an easier book to work on. To edit
here.
Yeah, you can have it. I was going to come to you anyway.
Have a dad moment.
Yeah, have a dad moment.
The thing about most people when they write their first book is they tend to write maybe twice or three times as much as they should.
Mm-hmm.
They think that they got to cover the waterfront, and this was not. Evan was typical of that. He wrote a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I went and I did an edit on it, and I cut back a lot of stuff, which I knew he'd worked hard on.
Yeah.
And as an author, having done stuff, it's so hard to take stuff out that you're proud of.
Yep.
And when the draft came back from him, he had taken all that stuff in, that information, the critiques, the advice, etc. And he didn't get bitter and pissy about it the way I used to when I was starting out in the business.
Sure.
What do you mean? This is great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he learned, he was a professional, and he turned the stuff around really well. And that's, to me, was really encouraging to see. And it means to me that he'll probably be able to write going forward.
But Evan, for me as an observer in this, because I do remember you coming to the radio station, and I do remember, your dad taught, and you were a shy kid, you didn't talk. But if we talked about the Canadians or whatever, you had your points, but you were also doing some work for your dad. Did you feel like you were a little bit of an apprentice, that you had that, growing up around your dad and helping him up? Did that help you in this?
Yeah, I think so. I think like doing the research for books and stuff, or just at least going through and, checking or fact checking and all that and correcting anything kind of made it like that part's, I love to do, but the actual writing of it, there's more grunt work that goes into it than just that. When you write the book itself, when you're just doing that part's, if it's your forte, then it's easy just to go back over and say, okay, this is a little wrong, and let me suggest this instead, because or this didn't happen that way, that kind of thing, which I did with a few of his other publications. The actual writing of it's a little different, because you have to have all this structure and be going somewhere and not be all over the map. Kind of, it really helps to afterward you do it sort of, not necessarily talk it out loud. You can whisper it to yourself. To go back through what you wrote as a chapter and actually read it out to yourself, see how it sounds, not just in your head, but out loud. And I find that is a helpful tactic to use, because then you see it from someone else's point, with somebody who would be reading the book. What would they think? Like, how would it sound to them?
Yeah.
So I did that, and that sort of helped me edit some of the stuff I'd already written. Not just to go back over and retype, but also to read it out loud when I thought it was all a complete chapter. I would do that. And,
to Rob's question too about how it affected you, I think it was helpful that Evan had been around watching me do stuff and coming into the studio, seeing you guys, being around players, being around it. A lot of people who come in from the outside, it's hard when you're a fan, you're in there, your eyes are, And Evan had a chance to be a fan to a certain extent, but also see that it was a business for you and me.
Yep.
The mics are off. We're in a break. We got to talk. We got to do this, whatever. He met the people, and he knew what they were like when they didn't have the jersey on, etc. So I think that helped him a fair bit in prepping. And my younger son, Reese, he ended up working 4 years for the Stampeders.
Yep.
And I think for the same reason, that they were able to see things, and they weren't just fans. They were able to do the job that they had to do.
But were you intentional, though, when your kids were growing up, about showing them, and the reason I say that, Bruce, is I learned.
I'm not the one to answer that.
No, yeah, you are, because because I learned from you.
Yeah.
About like, oh, you wrote a book. Oh, this must be the greatest thing in the whole world. And then it's like, no, like, you don't make money in Canada. Yeah. You do all the work. Just what you said. I write this thing, and then this guy puts his yellow pen on it, tells me to piss off, and I got to go do this. Like, it's not a glamorous thing. No. Like, and it's a lot of work.
But it's helpful to know that, isn't it?
Right. And that was helpful for me, so that when I'm interviewing authors, I know that, this isn't the greatest day of their whole lives, right? Yeah. Like, the greatest day of their whole lives is something else. This is your work. Yeah. This is what you do. So when Evan was young, when your daughter was young, when Reese was young, because this is your craft, were you ever intentional about giving them background, steering them away from it, or steering them into it? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is you look at the players nowadays, there's lots of second and third generation players.
That's the point I was going to make.
Yeah.
I wrote a column on Not the Public Broadcaster, basically.
I'm sorry, not the public broadcaster.ca.com. Thank you. .com.
Yeah. And I wrote a column about how it's a great advantage now. We look in the NHL. Your father was a player, and we can see how many kids are in the NHL.
Oh, we're going to come back to that in a second. Yeah.
In any event. So that is true. I was too busy to do anything consciously about steering the kids. I just thought that they would see what I was doing, sort out what they liked, and throw away the parts that they didn't, and that they would be able to go forward. Reese, for instance, after his 4 years with the Stampeders, decided he didn't want to work in pro sports anymore. He went and he worked in the film industry for a while, and now he's doing software stuff in New Brunswick. So I hope that they would see what I was doing, see the good parts of it, but also see the hard parts of it, see me frustrated or upset, or whatever it was that things weren't working, and see that it wasn't just a big fantasy world. And so I just hope that that's what they would see. And You know, he listen. He's been working with all the Bob McKenzie's and all the people at TSN now for at least 10 years. Ev, I forget how long it is now.
Well, the carrier capacity probably it's been over 8, but overall over 13 years at TSN.
Yeah.
So
you started as a summer student, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it wasn't an internship. It was actually it wasn't even an internship because they were expanding a lot because that was when that was just after TSN 2 had launched. That's how long ago. Now there's 5 feeds, right?
Remember that? I do remember that.
And they were needing more people to help with all the, they were increasing the amount of sports center they were doing, so they needed more people. So it was kind of like a trial by fire type of thing, like an internship, but it was actually just a freelance thing to start. Like, here's a few shifts a week kind of idea, and then if that works out, you get another, and then you're up to 5 a week, and then you're looking at full time eventually. So that's how it eventually slowly worked out that way. It was kind of like having not broadcast school experience, but enough knowledge about it, and having done enough work, on the side that I had the qualifications. But I had to then, when I was there, learn a whole new world, a whole new field of sports. Viewer fandom, I guess you say. It's not even fandom, but dedication and devotion to sports, but turning it into a career, a show, helping to make an hour-long show, every day.
So your dad said I should ask you, so I'll ask you, and this is the perfect place if you want to drop in a Hallmark moment. But growing up, was your dad an inspiration, or was he your dad and this is just what he did? He wrote.
I think it was just more like seeing his job, and I guess the inspiring part is just how cool it seemed at times to have that kind of job. And I wasn't even, necessarily the only one who looked at it and thought, boy, that'd be a sweet gig, or wow, all these people that he gets to interview or talk to and hang out with or experience, goes to the games and he's covering it, and all these crazy things happen. And it's like, oh, okay, now it's time to write a column, or before that, do a report,
right?
Or even back in a studio, just, hey, here's some highlights, that kind of thing. You don't see any of the difficult, sort of like on the go kind of, nerves that live TV can provide. I mean, I learned that years later doing at Sports Center and everything. And it was probably easier, the experience I had, because we were moving, through digital and stuff like that. You didn't have to pop tapes in all the time, and putting together a highlight pack didn't require so much, like techno
editing and all that.
Hard copy stuff. And so when I was young, it did seem, I don't know, like you said, glamorous earlier. It was close to it, because a lot of people I knew or that were friends with, peers at school, were, that I talked to that like sports, probably thought, damn, that's so cool and stuff. I saw him on TV. That's amazing. Like, they were more amazed than I was, because I had sort of grown up into it. So it was just, that's what his job is. So that's how it is, even though it is nice, but I didn't get too enamored. But I had a lot of friends that were, so that probably made me even more sort of like gleeful that was his career at times, is that people, there was a bit of a rub from it. People like wanted to talk to me about sports more, wanted to hang out with me, or bring up once in a while sports, and they would ask silly questions once in a while, like, oh, what did your dad think of this or that? And I'd be like, oh, like, I haven't talked to him about that. I'll ask him maybe, but I don't know.
The book is Inexact Science. The 6 most compelling draft years in NHL history. Ev, do you want to tell me about the new project?
Yeah, we're working on one right now. That's we're going to go through, rather than picking out years, it's like, with the draft, there's particular trades that we're going to go with now that are the most impactful, or at least there's no number it's necessarily been decided on yet. So that could be, I don't know if it'll be 6, just like this book. We might not want to repeat ourselves with that number, but there's going to be a series of trades, and we're just limiting it to the modern, like the expansion era. So we're going back to 67.
Okay.
Growth of the NHL, when really trades started to become more prevalent. Obviously, with double the amount of teams, there are more trades to be made, and trades started to become more important. The less the owners had their grip on the players, the less like of a fixed system the NHL was. So since then, we're picking like the most. I would say, I'm not sure the word we'll use is compelling, but impactful, I guess, is a good word to use. And the trades won't all be like the same kind of moves. And we're not necessarily picking like, oh, this first round pick for that first round pick. And
no.
It's more players, it's personnel, it's names.
Your dad let the cat out of the bag, because he's already told me that the Kachuk deal is in there.
Yeah, the good thing about this book is, unlike the draft one, where you can sort of pick a trade that's just from a year ago.
Sure.
And there's enough now after a year, but of course, by the time it gets written and stuff, we'll, however, whatever happens between now and then, we'll still have to preface it by saying this is premature. Some of it, let's not. Yeah. We're not writing the epitaph from this trade yet, but I mean, like if it were to be completed and finished and out on the shelves or whatever right now, then obviously there'd be a different slant for that Kachuk trade, obviously.
Absolutely.
But in a year from now, who knows?
Who knows?
It could be completely different. We'll see what happens for both parties, right?
It starts with the Esposito trade in '67 to Phil Esposito to the Bruins, which make the big bad Bruins. That's where we start.
Okay.
Frank Mahovlich's trade.
Okay. Gretzky. Or probably
Messier. Actually, I don't know if we're going to do Gretzky because we did a lot of Gretzky stuff in exact science. We're going to definitely Messier trade to New York.
What about Gilmore? Does that
Gilmore
count?
trade is in there?
Oh, it is in there. Okay,
it is in there. Yeah.
So Patrick Waugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Patrick Waugh. Evans. That's one of Evans. He's doing that.
I'm thinking.
I should know. I've been working on this. One of the other ones, which is more contemporary, is I've done a chapter about the Las Vegas expansion.
Okay.
What happened there? All the trades they made.
Oh, it's kind of as a whole story.
Yeah. As opposed to just a single trade.
Okay. I like that a lot.
Whatever there were the some odd transactions, etc. And how the Vegas guys took advantage of no move clauses and all that sort of stuff. So there's one trade that I've put, it'll be at the top of the chapter, but obviously there'll be a lot of other stuff.
If Vegas were to do something, it's kind of like when we were doing the last book, the chapter on 05, I was like, oh, the Canadians in the finals right now. I was like, might need to edit this. If they win the cup, the Carey Price angle changes completely. But I think it didn't even make. I think that the cup final ended after the final edit anyway, so it would have come out with incomplete information in that case. But in this case, it'd be like if the Golden Knights went on some run here and won the Stanley Cup, then we've got even that chapter makes even more significance, obviously, because it pays off down the road. And there's a lot of moves they made that were parlayed into others, and a lot of times teams were giving them draft picks just to not take certain players. It's sort of like they just reap the benefits of a new system that what was it? It was one of the famed capologists Lawrence Gilman came up with the whole structure for it. The NHL turned to him, and Bill Foley and the Golden Knights should be thanking him.
They should be sending him a Christmas card every year and a turkey.
Yeah, and Seattle, I guess.
Seattle, He already has a turkey. He works with the Leafs.
There we go. Two more for you. One has to do with your dad. Okay, to write a book, just has to golf a little less. You've got a full-time job. When do you write? Where do you find time to do the writing?
I sort of write it like before shifts start, kind of like in the afternoon. Whatever. I have this. Yeah, my wife is like a normal 9-to-5 job, and I have a daughter, and she's in daycare now, so it's not like people are around all the time. So I get more of a chance that way to write it, like that I did in ways with the first book, because I started that one in 2019, but I actually had more time to write it because it was always remote, because everybody was like. For me, I didn't come back to work in person. I had bothered them to say, "Oh, I can come in. I know I don't have to, but I'd like to come in once in a while." And that started again last May, and then it was quiet again. And now it's 3 times a week we come in. So now it's back to being, like a destination kind of workplace thing. So that would leave less time, I guess, too. And having a kid around and everything. There was probably more time for the first one than this one, but I still am finding time to fit it in. But it's slower, I think. I don't know if my dad can speak to that or not. Like, I've only completed
much. That's all.
The 2 that I was supposed to, like, we've split it up in terms of who's gonna write what, but then in the end I'll look over what he wrote and vice versa and flesh that out. But there's just 2 that I've written, and I think he managed to reel off double that amount at the same time, because he was golfing even more, but of course the golf season's shorter in Calgary anyway. But he's had more time in his hands to do that sort of stuff, obviously, than I have. So I've only been half as productive. But I did think one of the chapters he wrote, I've already gone back over and sent it to him. We've got a rough framework of those ones. We're gonna add to them as we go along with stuff from books and interviews and so on. But I'm a little less productive than with the first book, but I'm still finding time to. And I think he's been more of a help this time, because he's contributing more of the writing this time, and trying to get a faster system. Or this is going to come along more speedily than the first one, I guess is what I'm saying.
My last question for you. What was it like to sign a book? What was it like when somebody shoved it across the table and said, "Would you sign it for me?"
Yeah, a couple of people already there are kind of people I already know, but it's kind of cool. It's fun to give them something that I could, put my signature on, because they're obviously like, if I read this book or if I let someone borrow it, then they're going to see that here's proof that I know you, kind of idea. They'll have something to show them to say that this is, hey, my pal wrote this thing and here's proof. Because rather than cracking a photo of the two of us together, this is the easiest thing. It's just a signature from me in the, in the forward or wherever. So I've done that a few times and it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. Congratulations on this book in
Yeah.
Exotic Science. Best of luck on the next book, which is Deal With It, which is, I mean, you can't say it without me hearing your dad's voice. Like, as soon as I hear
the name, it's his name.
I know, but I hear it in your
better coming out of it.
I deal with it.
Deal with it.
Exactly.
Ev, congratulations on all your success, continued success. I hope you and the family are great. I know you've made your dad real proud. I know he tells you that, but to see you come, son, from where I saw you and to this point, this is awesome. Thank you so much for taking some time today.
Well, yeah, thanks so much, Rob. That's cool to hear. All right.
All right, buddy.
See ya. I gotta tell you,
Please,
a quick story, because you're talking about influences or
whatever.
Yeah. So when Evan was about 13 or 14, we were living in Toronto, and he and my son Reese and another neighborhood kid, they used to go down to the basement, and it was when WWE was
in its popularity there.
Was WWF at that time? Anyway, before they changed the names. Anyhow.
Oh, WWF then. Yeah.
So they'd go down to the basement, they'd wrestle and do all this sort of stuff, like
kids
boys
do.
Boys do. Yeah. So fast forward to about 20 years later. I guess it's about 20 years later, and the third kid who used to wrestle in our basement is now one of the stars of WWE, Karrion Kross. He's just
Karrion Kross was in your basement.
They were wrestling down there. This is where they all learned to do their stuff. So
where was this? Here in Calgary?
This was in Toronto.
In Toronto,
and he was a neighborhood kid, and so he's now one of the stars.
I didn't even know he's Canadian.
He lived in Toronto for a fair bit. His mother's Canadian. His father's from Vegas. He sort of split between both.
Yeah.
And he's got this whole thing now where he's got his wife.
Scarlett is his wife. That's his actual wife.
That is his actual wife. He was married to someone.
Done very well, hasn't he? He's done very well.
He was married to a woman from the Cirque du Soleil, but that didn't work out, and so now he's doing this.
He landed on his feet, I'd say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. So Meredith, my wife, watches the Friday night packages to see him. He's not at the top level. He's not the Roman Reigns level, but he was in the Royal Rumble.
Did you want to be part of our SummerSlam preview show with Brent Gibbs?
I don't know. Should I be?
Well,
she'd be my wife.
Your wife, Meredith,
she knows them all.
She does.
Oh.
I mean, it's not even a story anymore, but during the pandemic, Brent Gibbs, the vice president of retail for CSEC, and I, every Saturday morning, we would FaceTime each other and then log on and we'd watch Stampede Wrestling.
There you go.
And in order and historical.
The old ones.
Oh,
okay.
Because that was our youth, right?
So
we were, a little bit old, Bruce Hart and Brian Pillman and Mucka Singh and that. And it's carried on to the point now where we're actually watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling from the 90s, but that's neither here nor there. But we went to Dungeon Wrestling, which is Brett's kids put it on, and they go to the pavilion. And I'll tell you, it's been an absolute hoot. So you let Meredith know she's got a open invite to come with us.
Yeah, Kevin Kross is his real name.
Kevin Kross. Okay.
And I've got a picture somewhere of him with the boys in the basement.
Really?
Putting each other in grip holds. And now he's about 235.
Oh my God.
He's ripped.
He's a killer.
Yeah.
That was his independent name, Killer Kross.
Yeah.
And then they gave him
champion of whatever the AAA version was. He was the champion there.
Yeah.
And then they brought him up. I'm giving you some background. They brought him up, and but Vince didn't like him. And he was made to disappear. And then, of course, Vince had his problems. What
problems do you speak of? Well, he put a freaking helmet on the guy. Like, it was stupid.
It was terrible. But Triple H is a fan of Vince. Triple H, of course, I think his last is Paul Tremblay.
No, Levesque.
Paul Levesque. Anyway, good Canadian boy from Montreal. Actually from Quebec. And but he likes Kevin.
I know, but the old man's back.
I know, but Kevin still.
I hope
okay.
because he deserves a big
He's got his
run.
foot in the door.
He deserves a big run.
Yeah, he's very good on the mic. His best thing is on the mic.
And she's really good. Like
Yeah.
there's eye candy, and then there's eye candy with a purpose.
Oh, yeah.
And she's got a purpose.
Yeah, so
like
anyhow,
it's part of the presentation.
So you talk about Evan, what he got to see growing up. So some
But
days,
Bruce, that kid was in the hot stove lounge,
Yeah.
sitting at the table. You and I'd do 4 hours of radio,
Yeah.
and he'd be in a book and would go to a commercial. He'd stand up, he'd come over to you, and he'd show you something.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, Evan, yeah, Evan, yeah, Evan. I mean, and I'm not making light of him, but he was a shy.
Yeah. The
And-
idea was to stop him talking so we could get back on the show.
And if you ever said to me at that point, yeah, well,
Yeah.
wait 15 years and he'll be on our show. Yeah, okay, Bruce, it's your kid. I'm not going to say anything. You should be so proud. Like I'm telling you, like you aren't. I know you're proud of all of them. But this was wonderful. This was so much fun for me. So thank you for allowing me to do this.
Thank you. And he'd come home, and all my kids would come home, and like Carl Brewer would be sitting at the table having tea.
Now
with us.
now you're name dropping.
But that was his life growing up.
Yeah.
Those are the people who'd be hanging around our place. And
What about? And I maybe I should have asked him. I shouldn't have asked you. Do they ever watch the video or the video with you when you confronted Eagleson?
a little bit. I think Evan does, and I think Reese knows where. I mean, you know where to find it if you want to see it. I've got all that stuff. I put it over onto disc, but surprisingly, Rob, I don't watch that stuff as much as
No. I'm not saying you,
but I'm saying I save the stuff and I don't watch it, and the kids don't necessarily watch it, but they know of it and they know of the history of it.
Well, because
and people bring it up.
it's a seminal moment in hockey history.
Yeah,
it is a seminal moment. I'm not saying that because you're here. I would say that if you weren't here.
well, I did Alan Walsh's podcast because he wanted to
revive
that stuff.
Okay,
and talk about 2005. And he wanted to talk about what had happened.
Yeah,
in that era.
Is that Alan now?
I'm in trouble. No. This is where I tell him I can't talk now. Can I call you later? Yeah, it was a lot of fun to relive that because that was, and you and I talked through that whole time because we didn't have hockey.
We did not, so we had to
What
keep
did
it.
we talk about?
I can't remember. Oh, I know what we did. By the way, I just want to let everybody know that Evan was brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 1946, they started in Calgary.
Yeah.
3 locations: McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, just off of 14th Street, Bow Ridge Road Northwest, by McDonald's at Winsport. You're a skier, aren't you?
Good people. When I first moved to Calgary,
Yep.
and it's now 23 years ago.
Yep.
I can't believe it. It's that
Yep.
long. That's where I went to get my ski stuff, and they set me all up again. I'd skied when I was in Quebec growing up.
Right.
Moved to Ontario. There's no skiing in Ontario to talk about.
Right.
Came to Calgary and took up skiing again, and they did a great job in equipping me.
One of my favorite pieces of trivia is that, and you can fact check me on this, but if I've got this correct, weren't Al Mackey and Eric Dahacek both ski reporters in Calgary at one point in time, or didn't they both cover? Like Eric moved here to cover skiing.
Yeah, for the Olympics around that period.
Yeah. But I think didn't Al do it for a bit?
Al was a general reporter for the Herald, and then he went on to the Globe, and so did Eric. In fact, they went on to the Globe, and once in a while you get a call to go up and do the World Cup at Louise.
Yeah,
and they do that. They weren't on the beat per se. Vicky Hall tended to do more of that sort of stuff.
Well, in the modern era, but I mean,
Yeah.
I know Dahacek because we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and I think he got insulted when I said, "Did you have to do like go out and measure the snow depths?" Because you remember when we used to have a newspaper and there was the depths, right? Like it's, 192 inches or whatever. Okay, so my guest, Mr. Dowbiggen, I mentioned seminal moments. There's that, but also seminal books, Money Players.
Yeah.
Money Players to me is on the same level as The Game. When you talk about the books that have told the story of hockey, Money Players was one of them. And for no other reason, not no other reason, that's the wrong thing, Bruce, but the way it starts with Gillis, right? And the Bobby Holik deal, which isn't it kind of wonky? That's 25 years ago.
That was he was negotiating with Slats in New York City, and it was before I moved to Calgary, so that would have been in the mid 1990. Well, the book came out in I would say about 1999, 2000.
Okay,
right there. Yeah.
And Bobby Holik made $9 million a year.
Yeah,
contract?
$45 million contract.
Right,
and it basically ruined the Rangers.
Sure.
Drove Gary Bettman so crazy that he was able to go to the owners.
Yeah.
this is no lie. Go to the owners because of the whole league trade and say, you have to give me the authority to cancel the entire season if I need to in negotiations.
Right.
And they gave it to him. They in 94, 95, he didn't have that.
No, he didn't.
And you remember
they wanted back in, right?
And they pulled him back.
Yeah.
They pulled him back. And he said, I'm not doing this again. And when he came the third time in 05, that's what happened. And that's why he was able to cancel the season.
But even $9 million today, well, not the most, is still a high, so it's,
I sat with him that day. And he
and that's the start of the book, right?
Yeah, that's the first. Well, I think we started with the end, which was the press conference with Goodnow and all those guys sitting around after the thing was over. So I sort of
right.
But the first real thing is that time, and I sat with him that whole day. In the morning, he's sitting there in his pajamas, and we're talking, or he's talking, and I'm sitting there like a fly on the wall. And he's also negotiating for Mike Richter, and he's also negotiating for Tony Amonte that day. All those are the three guys. I think he got 2 of the 3 done that day. And but the whole league thing was fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And as a journalist, as a writer or a reporter, as somebody like it, to get on the inside of a story where people let you see how as you would say, the sausage is made, that's gold. And so it's one of the reasons the book has lasted. That and the hockey stick book that I did called The Stick.
Funny enough, called The Stick.
Yeah. I was very creative there. But those books have lasted.
Listen, you've written some great, the Grant Fuhrer autobiography. But I want to talk about this one because this is something you and I have taught. This one's called Cap in Hand: How Salary Caps Are Killing Pro Sports and Why the Free Market Could Save Them. This is a newer book.
Yeah.
Not brand new, but a newer book.
2019, I think.
Yeah, but you and I were talking this stuff way back in 03, 04, right?
Yeah. And what we're talking about today is more relevant than ever. This stuff, about smaller markets, and about the idea.
Do you still feel this strongly? I think over time it hasn't, because over time.
Well, there's a lot of people who don't want it to happen, and I don't underestimate the fact that they will hang on and make the sport worse. Just because they're being stubborn about not going to where reality is.
Right.
But the idea that I had was that we've moved into a global sports market that's global broadcasting, global wagering, all those kinds of things. And people don't necessarily want to see a Tuesday night with St. Louis playing Winnipeg. That's of no interest to them on that level. And
there's equivalents of that. Even in the NFL,
every sport,
right? Even in the NFL,
the Jacksonvilles and all that.
Sure.
Sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So the thought I had was, and because I follow soccer, the thought I had was, it should be like the Premiership, where you have 20 franchises that can afford to be up there. That you're not having some welfare that you give them to keep them hanging around. They can afford, their owners can afford to pay the price of doing business.
Right.
And then the people who can't play in a second division.
Right.
They give it a fancy name. They call it with the Premier. There's the Premiership, and then there's the
Champions League.
Yeah, all those.
And then the National and all that.
They invent those names.
Yeah.
But the idea would be that if you were reinventing hockey, you would have 20 of the top markets, maybe some in Europe as well as in Canada and in the United States. You would have them, and you would have a second division. If I was the NHL, I would expand to 48 teams right away, and I would have 24. I would have relegation and promotion. I would do away with large elements of drafting. I would have maybe a 1 or 2 round draft at most. I would let kids be free agents long enough so they could develop.
Any territorial component to that?
No. It's a free market. It's about
completely free market.
To a certain,
I mean, yes,
the way soccer does now.
But and I'm not trying to bog down on something, but you mentioned Europe, so you're saying an 18-year-old Swedish player could be signed by Calgary in this environment. A kid out of Moose Jaw could be signed by Farstad or Helsinki.
Well, they are now. There's no regional stuff anymore. There used to be when I grew up. When you're talking,
but I still think I still think there's international stuff. You don't see a lot of the SHL in Sweden does not do a Canadian draft.
Oh no. I appreciate that because they're a minor league.
No, it's not appreciation. I know here. You know that. I just want to make sure.
The Swedes wouldn't come here if the money wasn't here. They'd stay in Sweden. The Russians.
I find that hard to believe. Are you sure?
Have you seen Swedish girls?
Yes. No. I guess so. Yeah. So to that end,
there you go.
and I apologize because had I known we were going here, I probably would have done a little bit more homework on this. So this is off the top of my head.
Next time.
But was this not the failed Super League in football that they tried in Europe with with the teams?
A little bit.
That was a year ago or 2 years ago now. I guess pandemic makes everything.
3, yeah, the pandemic thing. It was also my thought, and I started thinking about it too because of Greg Norman in the 1990s. He wanted to have a global golf tour,
right?
And of course, it's ended up all these years later in the Live Tour.
How are you with that?
It's a business. It's a business. And I mean, these guys who are on the pro, I watch the Golf Channel, and I love the Golf Channel. But this idea that somehow the PGA Tour is like the Sistine Chapel and everybody's is pure, and all the guys who are over at Live, they're just money grubbing assholes or whatever. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it because I saw the WHA start. I saw the American football.
That's where I saw my first.
I saw them all start, and people said all this. Oh, those guys are going. Bobby Hull's going over there just for the money, etc. Well, actually, Bobby was going for the money. He was trying to get away from the word system.
Yeah,
but give it time and see what develops, because I think there is something better. And if they just get rid of all of the inflammatory stuff, tell Phil and Greg Norman to go away and negotiate with some of the more sane people at Live, and the same thing on the PGA Tour side. Get rid of the extreme people, that you will get a global product. And I think it can work in terms of team sports too. The NFL is too far down the road that they're on right now to really have to. They don't have to listen to anybody. No. But baseball, the NHL, and even the NBA, they kind of have to listen to people. We're just in and something else I wrote on my website. What's the website?
I'm sorry, it's not thepublicbroadcaster.com.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's
okay, good. Okay.
I wrote a column in the last little while, and you know about this. You may have talked about this. Of course, is cutting the cable. People are cutting the cable.
Absolutely.
And what is the result of that for pro sports? Well, so much for teams, sports that are regional. The NHL, the NBA, etc., even baseball. When they get so much money from regional broadcasting, but when people cut the cable, that's it. That money isn't there anymore, and they're looking at a huge shortfall in terms of money in those sports.
Well, Rob Manfred said it, didn't he? Like 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago.
Bally's going bankrupt.
Absolutely. But Manfred said it was great when we got people paying us who weren't watching us, which was the cable fees and the carriage. Is it carriage fees?
Carriage fees,
yeah, because ESPN was getting what, $8 a subscriber at one point?
Yeah. They still do.
Right.
They probably still do. But cable networks, as we know them, the people here, we have Rogers, we don't have Rogers here. We have whatever Shaw. I guess Shaw is becoming Rogers.
Shaw and Telus.
And Telus. Those would be the ones that you have in your home.
Yeah.
People, you probably know these people too. They've all said, I don't watch 85% of these channels. Why am I paying for them?
Exactly.
And so now they're going to go and buy YouTube TV. They're going to go buy. I have the Zone. I watch the NFL,
you do,
the Zone.
Okay.
So you can do a little hodgepodge thing, save on money, and just
but,
not have.
But
are
we saving on money? Because I've got Disney Plus, Netflix, Crave, BritBox.
Now, is this because you're watching with your family or just for yourself?
No, it feels like there's almost a different one for different members, right?
Yeah.
Like, the younger one and my wife get a lot out of Disney Plus. BritBox is for me because there's some stuff I want to watch from over there.
Okay.
Mom likes Netflix. The older one likes Netflix.
But at least you get to make that decision.
But Bruce, there's a whole lot of stuff on there I'm not watching.
Well, that's the point. Is you say I don't want all those things. I don't need your special bonus package.
But see, I'm almost positive I need the third History Channel at some point, right?
They don't show history on it anymore.
No, they don't. Truckers and logs and stuff, right?
Something like that. Anyhow,
yeah,
we're headed into a whole new economic situation for pro sports, for our economy in general, but in particular for pro.
Are we talking enough about this?
Because the owners don't want you to talk about it. The reporters, sports reporters, like to report on games. They don't necessarily like to get into those other stories that you and I have talked many times about it. One of the reasons I was able to do the stories I did was because nobody else really wanted to go there. It was a little bit dangerous. You didn't make many friends by doing those stories.
No.
And you're not going to make friends by getting too much into the cable cutting thing if you're going to go to the games. The owners and the players don't want to know that. But we could possibly see players' salaries drop by a third or maybe even a half in certain sports because, again, Bally Networks, for people who don't
Yes.
know, Bally Networks,
We
they run
have
all those regional
Yep.
things. Our good friend Ken Daniels out
Yep.
of Detroit, that's Bally Detroit,
Yep.
all those people, those channels, they may just disappear.
Well,
And
they have in baseball, have they not? Isn't
little
Major
bit.
League Baseball starting to stream some markets?
They're trying, but people don't necessarily want. They're not going to get the service that they get out of a streaming service from out of
It's
New
different.
Jersey.
Absolutely.
You'll get a game, but the top and tail, and will you get anything more than that? Will it be what you want? Of course not. It won't be what you want. So we're
See,
on the cusp of something being dangerous.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because to me it's the Rogers deal with the NHL.
Mhm.
It like again. Sometimes it's inside baseball, but I think
Did it happen when we were working together, or had it already happened that they went strictly with Rogers? I think it was.
No, it happened after the second go round. You
Yeah.
know, before you had the audacity, sir, the audacity to write truth about Rogers on a Rogers platform. How dare you, sir? God.
Now it's the Vladimir Guerrero network.
Oh my! But no, it's not even that. It's like, who can we rent stuff from now?
Yeah.
Right. And somebody says, "Oh, nobody cares, Rob." Maybe, but the fact that Sportsnet is now bringing in NHL Today rather than creating, rather than producing, to me, that's dangerous.
Yep.
We're not telling stories anymore. And God bless him. Cabril's here in Calgary, and he's a great guy, and everybody has to work, and I understand where it all fits. But we think now that instead of storytelling, we'll do the gambling stuff, and we'll tell you the odds. I still think there's value, and maybe it's an age thing, Bruce, and maybe the kids don't want it. I get it. But you said it, like, you don't get the tops and the tails. I'm worried that all the tops and tails are going.
You need a place to go to hear people bitch about their team or to celebrate their team. And that's
we're really good at that on this network.
Well, but I'm saying that's the new thing.
That's the new thing. No.
Do you have as many subscribers?
No.
As
and nor are we going to the National Hockey League with a check that starts with a B.
Yeah.
Right? What?
Bupkis.
Well, that's check. That check. Yes,
I get my check.
I get that check too.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm yelling now. Oh man, it's like we just left the studio and started again.
We need to go over to the hot stove.
We just got to go. What do you think the next NHL deal looks like in Canada? Cable deal.
TSN has got to have a piece of they got to get their beak wet in a way that they haven't.
Do you think Rogers wants any of it? Do you think Rogers is going to stay in the game?
I think that they've got, if they don't, then everything falls apart. Like they've built chains of the city TV chains, they've all of those things across the country. But the hockey's what holds it together for them. The hockey is what.
But they're not investing in the hockey.
Well, I know, but when they go to sell their advertising, that's the first thing they drop on the desk. Hey, by the way, we're the guys who have NHL.
I don't disagree, but you can't have it both ways. If I hear freaking what's his name, Jack Billy Jaffe's a great friend of mine. I love Billy, but I see more NESN games than I see Flames games.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what will probably happen too, and you're seeing it on the national level stuff, is we may see the next NHL contract be partly owned by Google or Amazon or Disney, or not Disney. They're getting beaten up so bad on sports these days. They'll probably stay away from it. But Google,
but they have the infrastructure through ESPN.
Yeah, I know they do. But you may have noticed they're just firing thousands of people at ESPN
again. You say,
yeah. The last week, and then the on-air people are going to go in the summer.
Absolutely,
in any event, you're going to see Google and all those people take the rights, maybe, or part of the rights, or maybe the whole rights from the NHL, because Gary likes the big deal. He likes
the money.
One big check.
They are addicted to the money, and I'm and I have no inside information, but there is nothing that I see from Rogers that leads me to believe that they're interested in continuing in this path.
But how do they sell their cell phones if they don't have
baseball and Raptors? Baseball and Raptors.
Oh, so it's just hockey.
I'm not saying they're closing Sportsnet. I'm just saying they'll keep their local. Yeah. They got the Flames and the Oilers and stuff like that. I think Vancouver is a very profitable market for them.
Yeah.
They'll do something in Toronto, but the NHL deal, I was told directly by the guy who's running when they were negotiating this thing back in 2013, they didn't want everything. They wanted their Leafs. They wanted to control the Leafs on Saturday night. That's all they ever wanted.
Sure.
And they still get to do that. But now, I mean,
But there was some.
Jack Edwards, by the way, I had an old man moment. If I see Jack Edwards on my TV one more time, I'm going to snap.
There was some waving of the paraphernalia in each other's face too. It was like whose was bigger between Rogers and TSN and that.
But they're gone now. Pelly's gone and Scott.
I know,
yeah.
I know,
Bruce, you need to know this. Yeah.
Rogers.
You might have missed it.
Keith was good to me.
Keith was always good to you.
I have no problem.
But
yeah.
But they built it and they left.
Yeah. But
because did they jump off a sinking ship?
Well, Keith got out ahead, of some things. Like all the people that he hired all got fired after he left.
So why would Bell write a big check to the NHL?
To keep the Toronto market.
From who?
From anyone, from Amazon, from Google. I mean, again,
I see what you're saying.
There are
so
you're
you're suggesting that Google could come in and say,
yeah.
See, do you understand the CBC deal with Rogers? Like, are they just renting the name?
They use the building. They basically rent the prestige of Hockey Night in Canada. The quid pro quo is that they do ads for Schitt's Creek and a couple of other things, and that's it. CBC gets nothing.
So if Rogers drops the NHL deal, then what happens with Hockey Night in Canada?
Well, it's a brand that will probably can be sold or whatever. I don't think that Rogers would entirely do it. I think they would hang on to Hockey.
You think they would
do Saturdays?
Okay.
Maybe, but again, they're always trying to keep it away from TSN. And what is Rogers in the business of, and what is TSN in the business of?
Selling phones.
They're selling phones.
So with jacked up prices.
You can't. Oh, you said that, not me. You can't.
Are we not as Canadians paying more?
Of course we are.
Thank you. Okay. This is not thepublicbroadcaster.com. We say things like this.
Mr. Burner.
We're controversial.
My other one will be called burnerphone.com.
Burner phone. Yeah.
Anyhow, as long as there's that competition, they'll be watching each other. But as I say, the future of broadcasting and who owns rights, and the NFL's going there already with Amazon and doing their Thursday nights and stuff. Where that's going is telling me it's going to be very different.
That gives cover to other sports, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the NFL's doing it,
then
we
it's
can
legit.
do it. And we can do it.
Legit. But the NFL still to this day, of course, national rights, that's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
The other sports, regional rights. The baseball, the World Series, okay, that's all right. The NHL, the playoffs, that's all right. But by and large, the meal ticket is the regional stuff. And if the regional networks disappear, big question. In fact, Canadian hockey fans are probably safer that they're not going to lose product because Rogers and TSN are in a more stable market. You know, they're not going to declare bankruptcy, but Bally and those people are declaring bankruptcy.
I agree. I just, it kind of, we can get into soccer stuff if you want, but it kind of pissed me off when, Sportsnet paid to broadcast, Soccer One or whatever it is, the Canada games lead up to the World Cup. It's like, hey, look, we got soccer. No, you didn't. They don't even do freaking, if you want to watch the Blue Jays and freaking spring training, you're watching the Pirates or the Phillies channel. Like either.
And some people
and now I can finally say this, and you can appreciate this. Why do we accept? You're just making me mad. Why do we accept?
No, I make you think.
Why do we accept?
That makes you mad.
Why do we accept one broadcast when the Flames play the Oilers? Why do we accept that?
Yeah.
It by definition, it's one of the best rivalries.
You need an answer?
I know exactly why, but we accept it.
We have lots, and baseball.
I hate it. I hated it, Bruce. I hated it when I had to do those games. I hated it because you knew automatically half the audience hated you for just opening your goddamn mouth.
Turned you off. Oh, the radio guy.
Ty. Sorry, Ty. I didn't mean to swear. Ty is one of my superheroes, and he doesn't like it when I swear on the podcast. So I apologize, Ty. But
apologize. Okay.
But we just all seem to accept it.
Yeah.
We just all seem to accept it.
What's your alternative?
Let Jack Michaels call the Oiler games. Let Rick Ball call the Flames games.
No, but what how do you pressure them into doing what you?
Oh, you don't pressure. You don't pressure. You can't pressure.
You
can't pressure them. I mean, okay, true or false? Yeah. Radio is better when you're actually there.
Radio is better
when you're actually at the event. The Jays don't travel. The Flames don't travel.
You're talking about the cruise.
I'm talking about the radio crews, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The radio, the broadcast is better. Now, again, inside baseball.
The last time I listened to a radio hockey game on radio.
I was going to get there to you. I mean, is that is that even going to exist in 10 years?
Not a thing anymore. Well, I thought because of COVID, they were going to go to the simulcast thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was the future. I wrote a column on not the public broadcaster.
Not the public broadcaster.
I wrote a column about saying sayonara to the home broadcaster, and in particular with baseball. But they seem to now be sending Dan Schulman and those guys back out on the road. But
but not the radio crew.
That's right. They stay at home.
Yeah,
they stay
at home.
They do it from the
to me, it's the death knell.
Of course, it's not the same because you're not talking to the people at batting practice. Baseball, in particular, is such an organic sport where there's a game every day, and if you're not there, you don't really know what's going on. Yeah. Hockey, they come there. You can get a lot of stuff at the skates and stuff like that, but not the same way.
Yeah, no, I think in the next couple of years, it's theater is what it's going to be. Especially what happens this year with baseball because they're the ones dealing with the regionals bowing out, and now you're seeing
basketball too.
Yes, but basketball is about to end. All the games are on national, right? Baseball's living it right now, and I think we've been seeing some lawsuits, saying we're not going to pay you this much, we're only going to pay you this, and that's, as you say, that's where the money goes, and the players get part of that. I'm really, I know we're all we were waiting with bated breath for the NHL salary cap to get to $100 million.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it might not go
stall out. Yeah. I've talked to a few people who are very concerned
that it might stall or go the other way.
Stall.
Okay.
Yeah. Because first of all, we may have a recession in the back half of this year.
Yeah.
Which will affect the general economy. And then of course, all these broadcast revenues and for people who don't understand the reason we had expansion, they thought for hockey, at least 67, was they wanted to be in different regions of the continent.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
But they wanted those broadcast things. They wanted to get into those broadcast networks. They wanted to be right across the continent instead of being stuck in the Northeast. They wanted all that stuff. And they with the basketball people, they looped into all of those networks. And for a long time, it's been very profitable. Very good for them.
Yeah.
And now it's out. And that's why I wrote Cap in Hand is like, what happens next?
Yeah.
Who's doing the thinking about what happens next? And what is it that the customers want? And yeah, we want to root for the Flames. We want to watch the Flames games. But other than that, who cares? Other than that, you want to watch the best. You want to see, well, today, for instance, in soccer, it's Manchester City is playing Arsenal. Probably the winner is going to win the Premiership. It's a global event.
Yep.
That's where the future is. That's where these things are going. That's what people want to see. They don't want to see somebody else's regional stuff. Listen, I know there's people in Pittsburgh who love the Pirates, but it's over. It's over for them as a major market. Let's concentrate on the major market. Keep the team. The Pirates don't have to go away, but you play in a second division. If you get an owner that says, you know what, I'm willing to spend the coin to get up there, then you do it. But right now, that's where I think the reality is pushing, and the gambling is a large part of that too.
Why hasn't
why don't we have gambling in Alberta? As someone explained.
Oh, we're working on it. Don't worry, but we'll get there. Now you open up two doors for me.
For the arena.
No, we'll get to the arena too. Why hasn't somebody in North America adopted, bastardized relegation in some form?
Because, well, hey, listen, tomorrow's the NFL draft, and it's become a huge property, TV property.
Right.
And the NHL and the NBA have made their so there's a kind of a, well, what are we going to do with that property, et cetera. But what I've always said was, when you come down the stretch in an NHL or an NBA or MLB season, the teams are playing out the string. They're tanking.
Yeah.
They're tanking.
Oh, it's terrible.
Right?
Look what Dallas did at the end of the NBA season,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have relegation, though, those teams at the bottom they're going like hell. Yeah. They don't want to go back down into the land of no money.
Yeah.
They want to stay up there with the big boys.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two things happening at the same time: top of the table, bottom of the table, all happening at the same time. I think it's a better product. It's a better thing to sell to your audience. And all of those teams are trying hard the whole time. I laugh all the time, of course, about the lottery for the drafts, right? And the NBA and the NHL, well, we can't have tanking. We can't, the worst record, we'll fix them. Now it's be divided amongst 3. Now it's 10 teams. Now you've basically told 10 teams, you know what, if you play
you got a shot.
You got a shot. So you've gone from worrying about one team. Now you got 10 teams saying, hey, let's start our backup goalie tonight.
Well,
I'm a cynic.
No. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it sure seemed like the savior of pro sports or sports on the sponsorship side. I think we can all agree that, as we see companies amalgamate and, the marketplace isn't what it used to be for sponsorship. It just isn't. And I don't think, the appetite just to buy a static board sign and go, poof, here we are. But it seemed like the crypto and sports wagering were going to be the two.
Right.
Crypto has kind of fallen off and maybe it comes back, maybe it doesn't. But the wagering, the sports gambling, and you just mentioned it. Bruce, is this, you mentioned the Premiership. The Premiership just went and self-regulated before the government did, right?
Yeah, they took the logos.
They took the logos off the jerseys. Is this
They didn't. They're not taking the money.
No, I'm not saying
They're
that,
still
but
taking the
they,
money from
they're
the
still
gambling.
taking the money. But is it the cash cow in is it going to be the cash cow continually in North America for the next decade, or is it just a fad right now to get the money?
It's only going to get bigger.
It is, eh?
So making a judgment, for instance, in the United States, I think it's maybe under 30 states that have legalized gambling. So there's still a lot of states that don't have it. Until we have a uniform picture across the country and know how it works, what is that optimum number? Because now you get people gambling in New Jersey who come, New York State has gone, that's a bad example. Pennsylvania doesn't have professional sports betting. So you have Pennsylvania people betting in New York. So you're not really sure what you're looking at in terms of your
I get that.
audience.
Yeah.
But anyhow, until we know that, we can't say what the finite number of dollars is in the market. But when you see Wayne Gretzky, and by the way, it was Janet who was gambling.
Oh, no, I absolutely. Yeah, no.
But when you see Wayne and he's there with the number one player of his generation and they're
with Rick Tocchet, she was gambling with Rick Tocchet, wasn't she? I think.
Apparently.
Got it. Yeah.
And I'm sure she led Rick down the
yes.
Anyhow, when you have them married to that image that much, then it's locked in for a while. Now people are pushing back. People don't like it, and they tell the teams and they tell the broadcasters there's too much of that. But what we're finding out is how many people actually do bet and how many people would like to bet on the sport.
That's the part that's fascinating to me because
dangerous.
But I think it's larger than I expected.
Yeah,
I think it's much larger than I expected.
But
I don't know why. I just didn't think.
Well, think of all the people who've had fantasy teams, fantasy leagues, and who've played in office pools.
Yep.
Well, now here's a chance. Like last night, I did a FanDuel team. Was it FanDuel or was it? I can't remember which one. Anyhow, and I just did one for the last two games of the night. And I won $20. But people out there saying, well, I could do the office thing, but I can just sit here in my living room and do a lineup and put in for $10 and make 20. That sort of stuff. And that's getting into people's minds. That's where they're going now. They're sort of saying, And then when we talked about the arena earlier, you go in and you sit there. Will the Flames, you have a chance to lock in, put a bet down. Maybe it's $1 or something. Will the Flames score on this shift? Boom, you press a button.
Yeah.
Well,
I honestly thought
it's part of the fun.
If I was bringing an American Hockey League team into Calgary, this was 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. My whole thing was I'd be basing the whole thing around events. That that's what my screens would show you. Will the Wranglers score in the next 5 minutes? Yeah. Will the visitors get a penalty in the next 2 minutes? And it just seems like is gamification the right way of saying this? That you're taking a couple of generations that have grown up on video games. And as I said before, I was saying to Boomer off the air, I am used to the filling out the betting slip, finding the bookie and, betting on a game, maybe a parlay.
Yeah.
Now it's these predictor games that they were doing before it was legalized to get everybody ready for it. Yeah. And that's what it feels like. It feels like props now. Feels like trivia.
It's props. Like tomorrow night for the draft, I've got all sorts of stuff on the NFL draft. The NFL draft's a big betting opportunity.
You do already?
Oh yeah. Also,
do you need help? Are you okay?
I've learned. The first guy I ever dealt with in Toronto, the first bookie I ever dealt with. And this is in the days when they were bookies.
Yeah.
Was a guy like this, and he literally. He would show up in a beat up old Cadillac and he'd have the odds written on a pen and paper here. And he'd open his trunk and the trunk would be full of utility stuff that was hot. And he was on the side. He was basically, stuff that fallen off a truck. He was marking. So that's where I started.
Yeah.
And I learned by hard lessons over time how to bet.
Did you ever owe a bookie?
How to manage. Huh?
Did you ever owe a bookie?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I've had to pay many times.
No, but I mean, were you always prompt on your?
Oh yeah, no.
You were
I
never like a movie where, Bruce, if you don't pay us by the end of the day,
I know people who've been in that situation, but
Yeah.
I didn't. And
Okay.
I never, again, I had Evan and Reese and Claire to look at, and I'm going like, I can't spend that money.
Yeah, gotcha.
I have a budget, but I've learned how to manage my money better.
Gotcha.
And there's now so many different ways. Like it used to be point spread for an NFL game, over, under, etc. Now all the props, all the other stuff that you can do the draft. You can do
well, and I don't want to come across as some sort of prude or anything. I have no moral. I mean, when I went to Vegas as a young guy, I thought it was great. Go to a sports book, watch a game, bet on it. It was cool. I'm just more fascinated by how quick, but also how quick our morals changed.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not gamble on the sport. Oh, you, Pete Rose, are an evil, bad man, and you should never get. You know what I mean? And
the judgment on Pete Rose doesn't look as good as it used to.
No, well, yeah, and that was always a staple of sports talk, right? Yeah. Should Pete be accepted or whatever? And now it's, and I'm not saying what he did was right. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying the whole societal shift happened so rapidly because it's only 2018 that the Supreme Court allowed.
In the States,
right in the States.
Well, people were betting a lot of money, and there was still Vegas.
Yeah. But I'm saying where all of a sudden now the other states could get in.
Well, right. and for Canadians, we've been able to access the offshores for a long time.
Yeah,
at least a decade that I've been involved with Bodog or Pinnacle and those kind of people.
Yeah.
But so you've had that, and what we're finding out now is how many people were betting all along,
right?
And how many people will bet now that it's easier. And they'll migrate from office pools to
I just find
selling squares and all that stuff to it.
I just find it a little obtrusive. If I want it, I know where I can go get it. But
I don't think they're selling it right. As a guy who bets, and I don't bet a ton of money, but as a guy who does it, I don't think. And God bless Cabby and all those people. None of the ads go anywhere for me. They don't make me understand why I should do this, or none of those ads are going to turn me into a gambler.
Yeah.
They need another way to send the message to be even more subversive and more dangerous to people, because they'll go, oh wow, that's even better, because they're not getting me to bet.
What I chuckle about, I don't know if you find this as funny as I do. What I chuckle about is the innocence of youth and watching, football. NFL football back in the 70s, and Jimmy the Greek would come on, and Jimmy was just predicting these games, and they're going to win. He's right. They're going to win by a field goal.
By 6.
He thinks it's going to be, and I had no idea what it meant. Yeah. It was just Jimmy the Greek.
It was him and Musburger basically doing all that stuff.
That's right.
And of course, Musburger and his brother have done VEASAN.
Yeah,
and I watch VEASAN every morning.
You do, eh?
Oh yeah.
So is that the way to do it?
Yeah, because there's a lot of people there who know what they're doing. Like I don't bet any hockey. I don't really bet baseball. I bet some golf. I like golf.
Yeah.
I do some NFL, but I do events like the draft and things like that. I mean, I try to stick to the things I know.
Okay.
And the things that I can handicap a little bit for myself. And then I also know people who are really good. Like there's one guy in VEASAN who does tennis to death. He's fantastic at tennis. He's winning like 60% of the time, maybe more. So, I follow him.
Sure.
But anyhow,
no. I'm glad. Hey, listen, these are not the same conversations I have when Pete comes on.
I did a story on Jim back when I was a young man.
Yeah.
And I was just starting out in the business. I was a TV Guide magazine, the Canadian TV Guide. You remember the little one went on?
I do.
TV?
Yeah.
And I was sent to New York City to do a piece on Jimmy the Greek.
Okay.
And I spent the afternoon with him at the Aqueduct racetrack. And he wasn't.
That's a movie, right?
Oh yeah. It was. Yeah.
There was,
for me, it was a movie.
There was made men there, I'm assuming.
Oh, Aqueduct and around Jimmy?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jimmy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And he wasn't having a good afternoon betting wise. And so my story was not getting anywhere. I couldn't get, his daughter was the liaison for me being there. And most of the quotes in the book, she basically she phrased for me, because Jimmy was not in a good humor about it. He talked a little bit about growing up in Pennsylvania and the hard Scrabble town, all that sort of stuff. And then we got stuck in traffic coming back into New York City. And I had to sit there with a brooding Jimmy the Greek for half an hour in New York City traffic. Going, oh my God.
All right. We've only got a couple more minutes, unfortunately. We could do this for hours. Back to the local hockey.
How many minutes do we have? Okay, we got a few more minutes.
8 minutes. How about that?
Okay, because
'Cause
I
I
want
gotta-
to say one last thing before we go. Well,
We're not going.
No,
yet. Yes,
let me know
I
when
will.
you're-
That's
right.
When have I never allowed you the last word?
Please.
All right.
My heart isn't as
You're
strong as it
right.
used to be.
Yes, no kidding. The local hockey heroes. We skirted this issue in hour number one.
Yeah.
We're both on the same page. Yesterday was a little bit of a head scratcher. Deal in principle. On this show, we'll deal more with it as the week goes on. But how much of this with the local heroes feels like Groundhogs Day? Does this not? I mean, you've been here for now about 2 decades. Does this not feel like not the same actors and not the same movie, but the plot feels the same?
A lot of the things are the same. The big difference is the ownership group of this hockey team is not the same as it used to be.
Yeah.
It's not guys who brought the team to this city and who were determined to do everything they could. They weren't guys like Harley Hotchkiss who were, open-hearted guys, et cetera, and who were going to do everything for the city. I mean, is there somebody here if Murray and the guys decide that that's, that they're fed up with this situation? Is there somebody who's got $1 billion to buy this team and finance it and run it? I don't know. I mean, there are people with $1 billion in Calgary. There are rich people here, but is there somebody who's disposed towards financing the hockey?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, not whose name has come up. Let's put it that way.
And that's what concerns me is if this ownership structure we have now falls apart or isn't working and they decide they want to get out, who rescues this team to keep it in the city?
Wasn't it supposed to be the Shaws? Like
a long time ago.
I think there's always these names, right? The big
Yeah.
family names, the Thompsons, the Shaws, they'll jump in, they'll spend the money.
We find, Rob, that people who get rich is because they know how to not spend big amounts of money on things that are unpredictable. They spend conservative amounts on things that work.
But am I?
So I'm
but am I off base on this? Because I agree with you up to this point. If I'm paying attention, and now they're telling me that the sale price of the Ottawa Senators might be north of $1 billion. Was 800 million there? Like it's valued at 450. Now it's 800 million. They might sell it for over $1 million. Say what you will about this club, and it has its issues.
Yeah.
But to me, it's got more value than the Ottawa Senators.
You would think so.
So if you're Murray, are you? No, I think I'll hold on to it for a bit here.
Do you think there is even somebody out there to tempt him by trying to buy it? I don't think there is. I don't think
in Canada.
Well, somebody who would keep it in Calgary.
I don't know, Bruce, because
I'm as an Expo fan. I remember when
I
bought
know,
the Expos.
Yeah. Oh my God,
and I don't want that.
No, I don't. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But your point, it's kind of if you run a good shop, you got a redundant backup.
Yeah.
Right. If I go down, somebody's got to be ready to come in. If you go down, somebody's got to be. If not Murray, then who?
Yeah. Well, that's my point.
And I don't
That's what worries me a little bit about
it. Does, eh?
And the thing about a city like Calgary and the size of the market, et cetera, you really want them to be a cutting edge. I refer to the Expos earlier, but one of the saving graces about the Expos and through almost the whole time they were there is they had really good baseball people who turned out prospects and they were cutting edge.
Mhm.
And everybody in baseball said, how do the Expos do what they do? Continually bringing out the talent. That's what Calgary has to do. And I'm not taking a shot at Todd Button or anybody here. I'm not saying that the scouting department hasn't done a job, but in every way that you run your business, that people look at you and say, yeah, that's what we should be doing.
No.
And what I get the sense of now is this group is trying to imitate everybody else. And I want to see them be the trendsetters.
I love that answer because, we ask everybody that comes on and, well, they ought to talk to Eric.
Other people come on?
Yeah, once. What happened one time?
I thought because I was
this is really encouraging to me because you stayed for the whole time.
I thought it was because I owed you money.
No, but they ought to get Eric Tulsky. But the other thing I hear all the time is, well, they ought to interview other people. Okay. And then they can ask them how come it works for them. And I'm like, what are you trying to do here? Yeah. To your point, we had these conversations around Daryl's first tenure, and we were talking about who, I remember talking about, Vancouver, and you had the inside line on Mike Gillis. Yeah. I was like, well, why
was trying to make Vancouver the place that was doing things.
So who's out there in your mind if you were recruiting for this position right now, and I'm Bruce, I don't know if I should tell you the parameter is you inherit Daryl or you get to make a decision on Daryl. I think it's you inherit Daryl, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that's a big difference.
Well, no, it is a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah. I will say going into this, I don't follow it the way I used to enough to know who the hot young people are.
Yeah.
Men or women, who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have somebody who I can say that person needs to be put here, but they have to find that person who's ready to come in here and make this a going concern.
Would you interview Craig Conroy?
You know, obviously, I think you have to do that. I'd like to hear what Craig thinks, because I'm sure Craig has had to bite his lip when other people were above him. Sure. He may have those ideas.
Yeah.
He may have those ideas. I think he's a guy you want to keep around your franchise. You know, he's a good humor guy. You want him around, and I would give him the interview, but I just want people to watch a Flames game and say, wow, man, they run a good shop. Look at them. You know, they have a small market, but compared to other people, but look at what they're able to do with it.
That's part of, and I could be completely proven wrong. And I it's a drinking game around here. Everybody knows, oh, he's about to talk about Matty Phillips. But I just felt like that was the biggest swing and a miss this year.
Yeah.
That you lose 24 games, or you go 24 times, you go to overtime, you lose 17, you lose whatever it was, 32 1-goal games, and you had this kid, and you never gave him a chance. You played him 2 games and then sent him back.
So Daryl.
Right. But because Daryl comes from that era that it's not my job to develop at the NHL level.
Yeah, well, maybe he still thinks that, but it's his job to find some guys who can score in the shootout, because the shootout cost you a playoff spot.
It did.
Let me ask you a quick question here.
Absolutely.
I know we're up against. Why do you think it worked for Daryl in LA and it hasn't worked really the way he wanted it to here in Calgary?
Because I think the game has changed that much again.
No, but it wasn't working for him before. Then he goes to LA and he wins.
Well, I think he went to,
when we all predicted that it was going to crash and burn.
But I think he picked up a team that had Doughty and Quick and Kopitar in their prime, good players. I think they were underachieving. I think he went in there and cracked the whip. You know, you talk to Robin Regier, you talk to guys that played down there, and you know, Daryl was Daryl. He was just coaching. The same thing in 03-04, right? He was even the regular season of 05-06. I know how the first round ended, but it was a good team in the regular season. They weren't having any fun, and they weren't having any fun in LA, but they were winning. Right. And I think
I'm just wondering whether that leadership group, just basically pushed him to didn't let him stand in the middle of the dressing room the way he does now. That they had him in the dressing room and they knew what they could do, but there was also
my understanding is there were a couple of times the doors got locked.
Okay.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's just my question.
Okay.
I don't have I didn't have an answer to it. I was just really
curious. No, I think, but I still think the game has, and I know it's almost a decade ago now, but I think the game has undergone a lot of changes yet again.
Oh yeah,
I think
absolutely.
You know, it's funny. I watched the physicality. You know, okay, you have something last to say. I'm going to finish with this. You and I, some of the greatest conversations you and I ever. I remember one underneath the uprights of a big man, and we talked about fighting. Mm-hmm. And you were so wrong, Bruce, and I was happy to tell you and inform you how wrong you were. And and God bless you, because you'd stay there and listen to how wrong you were and everything. And here we are, 20 years later,
out of the game. Really,
for all intents and purposes,
the juniors are getting rid of it.
They never had to mandate it. They just, and I think, you know, to me, when we talk about Daryl in LA, in between Daryl in LA and this tenure, fighting fell off. And I'm not saying he was all about fighting, but the game changed, and that was one of the indicators the game changed. And I am here to say that if I could go back in time, 33-year-old Rob owes you an apology, because 33-year-old Rob was full of piss and vinegar and John Wayne and rah and masculinity, and you gotta fight, because that's what men do. And I did it on the radio and everything like that.
But that's
53, but it was good. But 53-year-old Rob now has taken the the Concussion Institute training, and you know, it gets me going, sure, but I don't need it. I'm not sitting watching the game anymore. I'm not calling for its outright ban. I'm not sure. I'm very curious to see what happens in the Quebec League. I think it's
going to ban itself.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Malcolm Gladwell did a piece years ago about how we thought that maybe in 25 years the NFL wouldn't exist because people are losing the appetite for that.
I remember
that kind of violence. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
But don't you think without fantasy football and gambling, it might have?
Oh yeah.
I don't think we appreciate, not you and I, but I don't think the general public appreciates how much fantasy football is responsible for propelling that league forward.
Now that I'm an old guy,
yeah,
and old guys they shake their fist at the clouds. My only hockey thing, and this has bugged me for 20 years. Why I don't understand why hockey people don't do this. And another thing comes from soccer, is I don't understand why it is when the other team has their 5 guys inside of your defensive zone, you are obsessed with having your 5 guys stay in there. Why do you not take your best player and put him at the opposite blue line and force them to relieve the pressure and have somebody come out and cover your guy?
Groupthink.
Exactly. It does 2 things. First of all, you have breakaway pass. Second of all, you'll never get an icing against you because your guy's right there. He can win every race against icing. It's, to me, it's all of a sudden creating using another half of the rink that we don't use right now.
From what I've seen,
you do 5-on-4 all the time on penalty.
From what I've seen in hockey, that even if a coach in the American League said, "I want to try this," he'd get beaten down.
Oh,
and if he got away with it, then he would be that crazy guy in that team that we don't talk about.
Like
right?
Mike D'Antoni in the NBA who wants to do full court press stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I just said I'm so old and so cranky.
Yeah, it's funny because mine I'm so sick and tired of watching more of the game in replay and being rewound than in live, because of all the reviews. And then I'm so sick and tired of us playing people's court with that's a goal, that's not a goal, that's a goal, that's not a goal. I'm okay with human error. My parents were okay with human error. Clear.
But my thing is,
you want perfection?
My thing is, if you can get it right, get it right. Yeah. And that's where the gambling comes in.
Well, you clearly don't listen to this show enough. Because there's none of that around here. No. Last word is yours before I have my last word, but go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, and I remember back in 2007, and of course I came on to co-host with you because our good friend Joe Fan got sick, and he passed away in I think it was March of 2007.
It was Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it was in February. Okay,
yeah,
that's right. Okay, the point I was going to say is that. I was working with you because of him, and I was on the air with you the day that I got a phone call that my dad had passed away.
Yeah,
and I was in the studio with you.
Yep.
And I went out and took the call, and I came back in, and my head was spinning, as you can imagine. And you said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "You know what? The best thing for me to do is let's finish this show." And I always wanted to thank you for, you had just the right tone for me. I was dizzy, trying to think of what was going to happen next, all that sort of stuff. And I've never had the chance to thank you for it. A moment when you only have a father die once. So it was a big moment for me. And it was a moment I always remember from our partnership.
I appreciate that.
And so
thank you.
Yeah.
And I
losing him and Joe Sports in the same period of time was very close. Yeah.
It was hard.
Anyhow, thank you.
But I listen right back at you because I moved here and right away I got, Joe and Kevin's producer and little fill in here or there. And then I got thrown on the morning show, and you were, I think, the lone live guest on the 960 morning show at one time. And you had the column in the Herald and you wrote a really nice piece about me. And that just settled me right down. I had, I'd moved my family in the whole 9 yards, and I didn't know, like, this is the big time for me. And then you wrote something really nice in that column that you didn't have to do. And I'm forever grateful, but I'm forever grateful because we haven't talked in 11 years.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. You walk through the door, you sit down, we can do this. Yeah. You're the best.
Well,
you are the best. Would you come back?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to have you back. Where can I find you if I'm looking for you? If I wanted to read more or listen to you, or where?
I'm usually in front of the Costco down
at the Costco. Yeah, okay. You can find me looking
online
for samples.
Not the public broadcaster.
Not the publicbroadcaster.ca. .com. I said it's not the public broadcast.
Well, here's the CA one.
Uh-huh.
If you want to see any of my books.
Yes.
We didn't even talk about the biography I just did with the CEO of the Bank of Montreal, Tony Comper. I did a book with him, helped him do a book called Personal Account.
Oh, really?
I did something other than hockey.
And how was that experience?
It was fantastic.
Was it?
He has a box for the Leaf games. He has a box for the Rapid.
You just said nothing to do with sports.
He has a box. That's where we go, and we did a lot of the recordings. Anyhow,
Okay.
But if you want to look at any of the books,
Yes.
BruceDowbiggenBooks.ca.
CA. Not the publicbroadcaster.com.
That's for
BruceDowbiggenBooks.ca. This one with your son, Evan, in exact science.
his name's first, too, on the title.
Yes. And a new one coming out. When do you think Deal With It will be out?
We're self-publishing, so I'm going to hope towards the end of the year.
Okay. You'll come. Well, we'll have you back
I'll
before
listen.
then, but we'll certainly have the two of you on.
Call.
Thanks, buddy. This was
Thank
fun.
you. This is good. Even if I ran out of water half an hour ago.
What can I say? I'm a terrible host. Bruce Dowbiggen, everybody.